Another year, another Game of the Year nomination time, and man, has 2023 been an amazing year for gaming. I can't think of a single person who's like, nah, this year sucked for gaming. No, this year has been absolutely banger after banger when it came to AAA releases, indie releases, you name it. There have been a ton of great games this year in 2023. So, of course, what we all have to decide now is which was the best for us personally and for the gaming industry as a whole. What's going on, everyone? Tallen here at Direct Gaming, joined by LittleBobby and Lethal, and today we need to talk about Game of the Year. It is the topic that everyone loves to discuss between now and the Game Awards coming up. So, without further ado, let's get into what we think is going to be our personal Game of the Year choices. And by the time you guys are seeing this video, the official nominations are officially released, which means you can go down to the link in the comment below and pick your own personal Game of the Year, director, actors, everything. Go ahead and pick them all. But we're gonna be talking about Game of the Year today. So before we get into talking about everything here and let the other two talk, because I'm tired of talking right now, we have obviously a ton of games that have released this year. From everything from Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2, Tears of the Kingdom, RE4 Remake, Mario Wonder, Hogwarts Legacy, which sold amazing when everyone thought it wasn't going to originally. Obviously remakes like Metroid Prime Remaster, Lies of P, Jedi, everything. Just there are tons of games that have been released this year. And so which one's gonna be Game of the Year? You talk to almost anybody and they're like, no, this one's gonna be Game of the Year. No, this one's gonna be Game of the Year. But obviously only one can win it. So let's go ahead and start. We're gonna have, all three of us here are gonna have our personal pick for Game of the Year. And we'll also have a runner up. Just again, this is our personal own thoughts and lists and everything. So whatever is officially announced and then officially picked, obviously can't predict the future, but regardless, these are our personal games of the year. So LittleBobby, let's start with you. What is your personal Game of the Year for 2023?
I personally think that Baldur's Gate 3 is the game. There's not many games I've seen that have taken as much love and care and really worked out every little facet of what you could possibly have happen in like an RPG and then work that into player's choice. We were talking before, right? We started recording and I mentioned I played like 3 or 4 hours of Baldur's Gate 3. And just in those few hours, every single thing that I did, I could feel that like the interactions that I had with the characters had an impact on where I was going, right? I got into a place, like you start on a big ship and you can either help a character you find or just like let them stay there. And I was like, well, I'll help them. And then later, the ship crashes and they join my party. And I'm like, if I didn't help them, then they'd either hate me or they'd be dead. Right. Which is really cool, getting like this brand new character right away. Then if you wander around, you can find other new characters. There's like one character you meet who's worked himself into an awkward situation and you can like help him out or just leave him. Right. And I'm one of those people who's like, well, I'm going to help all the characters. So I do that and they're like, oh, well, I can join your party now. And it's just so cool because then as you go along, each one of those characters will like judge how you do things and that changes your relationship with them. And then you can also interact with each NPC and have like a different interaction with them depending on what you want to do. Like you could choose, like if they've captured another character that maybe you met somewhere, you can go, oh, I'll just let them like do whatever they want with that character. And so that you just walk away and that character then like either dies or they hate you. Right? It's every single choice that you make in Baldur's Gate 3 is incredible when it comes to like how it affects your playthrough. And so like it's one of those RPGs where I could see later on going through playing, just going, I'm going to do everything totally different. And by the end, it's going to have this butterfly effect where it spirals so far off into where your first ending was, because of how you chose to interact with everybody. And I just haven't seen anything like that, honestly. I think that is just phenomenal. I know Divinity Original Sin is another game that done that, but I never played that. But I was impressed every second of Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, I mean, and just the discussions that it created and everything, and everyone going like, this is the new standard for not only these types of games, but just simply what we should be expecting from developers and publishers, especially because as everyone knows, especially over the last like 10 to 15 years, there have been tons of great games that have released just crappy, buggy mess. Doesn't deliver on what they promised. You all know the drill at this point. But Baldur's Gate 3 just came out and has been like, yeah, hold my beer. And they've done amazing. That game has sold amazingly. And like it's just about to release here in Japan now. And I know a lot of people that are super excited for that game. So that's just gonna increase their yeah.
Oh, it's not over there?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's actually really interesting.
It's interesting to hear that because like seeing Japanese players so interested in like a Western RPG is kind of unique, right?
It is very unique, but the hype around this game has carried across the ocean and a lot of people are excited about it. So, you know, they don't play every Western game, but they're excited for this one. So I'm interested to see, I'm especially interested to see all of the commercials and advertisements that I'll see on like trains and at the stations and everything and be like, yeah, no, this game's going to do probably pretty well if we see some stuff.
It's funny because like I feel like I remember the discussion being about like Diablo 4 this year and the hype surrounding that one. And then it was like, oh, then there's the whole Starfield. And I feel like out of nowhere, like literally Baldur's Gate just came. I just feel like it was that one game that like we all heard about. We're like, okay, like, yeah, that sounds like it's going to be something. And then it just like took over everything. Like it just became like that game to just dominate that conversation, especially out of a year with like Diablo 4 and like Starfield, at least from what I've seen for those kind of like similar games. So that is going to be one of those games I definitely want to play like later down the road for sure.
It's 100% true though, because I mean, think about it. Diablo came out in early summer around June, right? Mm-hmm. Starfield was in September. So it's a good chunk of time, right, for both those games to start to flourish and everything. Baldur's Gate just released in August. It made a ton of people second guess Starfield and be like, a lot of this stuff just seems like kind of stuck in the past. And Diablo was like, Diablo what? No, I'm playing Baldur's Gate. Like, that's what happens. Like that has to do that to two huge games like that is just like, that's kind of unheard of.
What's the old wrestling thing? The RKO out of nowhere. Right, that's basically what happened. Right, is like Diablo was like everyone was like Diablo, it's Diablo. It came out and then people found out it's got some of the same issues that Diablo 3 had, which is really weird because you spent years fixing Diablo 3. And everyone's excited about Starfield because you're like Bethesda space, like No Man's Skyrim. This sounds awesome. And then Baldur's Gate 3 comes out and it's like, oh, by the way, this is the most insanely complex RPG game that's ever been built by like a wide margin. Not even like, oh, it's a little better. No, this is by a wide margin, the most complex, in-depth, like super cool RPG, like old school style RPG that's ever been made. So yeah, sorry about that. Like Larian's just like, sorry, we just put out the game that we wanted to make.
And it's not just like you said old school RPG, but I think it's more than just that. They took what was good in the past and improved upon that. So you see those old school RPG elements, but at the same time, they didn't just keep the full game, quote unquote, stuck in the past or anything, right? They improved certain mechanics that have not worked in years, right? They've, just pushed past and been like, no, this is what should be done in these types of RPG games now. So they took the best of both worlds and just smashed them together.
Yeah,
and
it truly reminds me of the thing about Baldur's Gate 3 is it truly reminds me of like Dragon Age Inquisition, or excuse me, Dragon Age Origins, where it's that very classic, like isometric top-down style RPG. Very in-depth with like how the characters interact and everything, but they just took it to like the nth degree, right? They made it so like, it's like you said, it's an evolution. It's this exponentially greater thing than the RPGs of the past, and that's why so many people have been like, it just changed the game, like it did.
Absolutely did. So all right, Lethal, let's move on to you now. What is your game of the year? We're gonna go through all three of our game of the years and then we'll go to our runner-up. So Lethal, give us to us right now, what is your game of the year for 2023?
I have to go Final Fantasy XVI. That is my game of the year. I thought about it. This was actually hard because this is coming off of someone who just finished Spider-Man 2 not that long ago. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, the recency bias almost hit me. It almost bit me. It almost bit me. And then I had to like take a second to think about it. And I was like, man, did I love Spider-Man 2? Then I went back and thought about a previous game that I was like, 100% my game of the year at that point. And I was like, but Final Fantasy 16. And then I really thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I think at the end of the day, I had to go with Final Fantasy 16. And I mean, there's tons to love about Final Fantasy 16. For me personally, the things that just drew it out to me the most is number one, honestly, number one being the story. That story, I don't know what it was, but that story absolutely just like captivated me, and then it destroyed my heart. And it was a tearjerker.
It was excellent.
It was
a great
so
story. Absolutely.
It's been a minute since I think, like, even, I mean, I wouldn't say Final Fantasy 15 didn't hit me that way. It definitely did, but this one just hit me like so freaking hard. And again, I think it also comes from the fact that like I thought this game had superb voice acting, some of the best voice acting, at least even in a Final Fantasy game, but like just some of the best voice acting in a video game
in general.
Yeah. It's just like out of this world. And I think that's probably what made the story feel so much more impactful to me, was that I just really felt the freaking acting coming through with all those scenes. I think that's like the number one thing for me for that game. And then obviously like the rest can come in. And I think that next one that comes to mind for the next big point for me for this game, standout, was the icons, aka the summons, as you know from like the previous Final Fantasy games. Just the way that they did it for this game. Like I thought, when they announced Final Fantasy 16, the one thing I thought was like, I wonder how they're gonna incorporate summons. It's like a thing, right? It's like the thing with every Final Fantasy game, right? It's how it's gonna get done and whatnot. But just the emphasis that they had in this game, and the fact that this game took like a sick Game of Thrones kind of spin, but in a medieval Final Fantasy world, and just the emphasis they put on icons, right? Those are the summons. And how they just went with like each of the different leaders from the different regions and everything, and just, oh my god, the dominance, right? And just how they incorporated the whole thing of like being a dominant and having the icon, and just the way that they did all that alone. And then obviously the goddamn big icon battles, those big kaiju style battles, I thought were just so freaking awesome. And obviously those were like the big spectacles, right? Those are the big like cinematic-y, flashy fights that I thought in this game particularly, like just Square they just went like balls to the wall. They went insane when it came to these icon battles. For me, I have to like, the two big ones, obviously the Bahamut fight, which was absolutely insane. Absolutely insane.
That fight was awesome.
I had to, if there's two of them, it's obviously the Bahamut fight for me, and then the Titan fight from the from earlier in the game. But those are just
I think that's everybody's, Lethal. I think that's the two.
I know.
Like in that game.
So some people will say like the Odin fight and whatnot, but I mean those two for
Odin
sure.
was good, but those other two were
Right.
whoa.
It wasn't the best.
Right.
Was not the best.
So like those fights, go Tallen before I keep doing.
Yeah, that's fine. One thing I've heard, I completely 100% agree with everything you're talking about when it comes to Final Fantasy 16. But one thing I think that a lot of people did not talk about initially, but I absolutely loved and just gushed over, was the music.
Oh,
the
100%.
music was top tier. I mean, dude, when you, I guess technically spoilers for the game, even though the game's been out for months now, obviously, but when you dive into Clive's mind and you have to fight yourself essentially, but you're really fighting the dominant, all that stuff. Like that music, when he accepts the truth, that music, like, damn, come on, like,
honestly, every single like icon fight, like the soundtrack for those were just chef's kiss. They were just
top,
so hyped,
man.
just so freaking.
I would say if Game of the Year was based on music, it would be Final Fantasy 16.
And
16 just has the best music of anything.
And they better be playing music at the Game Awards. Like, they do like the Game of the. Oh, well, hopefully it's I'm praying this game will make it for the TGAs. But this game has to have the music sampled and shown off and played at some point at the TGAs this year. But beside that, the other couple things I just wanted to bring up too was my other big thing that I liked about this game. It was the combat. Even though for some people some people felt different about the combat. In my opinion, the way combat was done in this game, I thought was so freaking awesome. Just the use of like having the different icons, like abilities and everything, incorporated into different types of combos. And I always forget the guy. Unless I don't know if anybody here remembers, but the combat director that helped work on this game from the Devil May Cry, I keep forgetting his name.
He was a huge help. He was a huge help to that team making
100%. And for me, like that just really stuck out. I seriously love the combat in this game. And that's just for me one of the biggest things that I'm like, that's why I love this game, was just the combination of the different icons, abilities and whatnot, to just create your own kind of like combat. And it just, to me, it was just fun to experiment with different combos, juggle, do what you want to do. Like, dude, switching between like the Garuda, going between like Shiva, and just just back and forth, right? The blocks and the parries with Titan. Like, I could go on, but like, I really love the combat in this game, and I think it's another big thing stand out for me. And I think I would just say the last thing for me stand out was the characters. I think I loved every single goddamn character in this game, even the side characters, right? I'm talking about Gav. I freaking loved him, and there's so many characters. You know, I mean, not that Torgo was a side character. I freaking love Torgo too, but there's just so many characters. I mean, even Sid, like he wasn't. I mean, he's probably one of the main characters. You could say that too. Even like the Dominants, right? All the people like, oh my god, I'm forgetting some of their names, but like Benedicta and like. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting all their names, but like the entire cast for this game, I thought was just fantastic. All those characters, I freaking loved them. And for me, that's always like a big thing. Is like if I actually like cared about the characters while I was playing the game, is a pretty big thing. The only thing that I could ever say that I just wasn't the biggest fan of, and I can get some of the criticisms, was maybe some of like the side quests and some of those RPG elements that people were talking about. I get that.
Yeah, I would definitely. I definitely agree with that. Some of those RPG elements definitely could have been woven in a little bit 100%. More. I mean, especially when you see yourself using fire against fire, and you're just like, "Wait, this is
right." I can 100% get that, but the ending to my whole spiel here is the fact that like I felt like there was so much good and everything else that it was enough to be like, okay, that's fine. Like, you know, I still thought the combat was fun despite all that, and I still thought the main story was so good despite maybe some of the side quests not being the best. But yeah, for me, Final Fantasy 16, that's my pick.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Shout out, by the way, to Ben Starr, who has become my favorite person on Twitter.
Dude, that guy's an amazing voice.
He's so awesome. Great on Twitter.
He's the best.
I absolutely, every time I see a tweet of his, I'm like, I'm gonna sit here because I know this is a skit and I'm gonna watch it for like 3 minutes. It's fine with me.
I'm praying for him to get his award.
Oh yeah, he better win the voice acting award because he was fantastic.
Easily.
Yeah. So Tallen, what is your pick on Game of the Year?
Oh man, I mean, again, there's been so many great games this year. I mean, even from the early, beginning of the year, playing, I'll admit I liked games like, Jedi Survivor, even though it had some pretty bad bugs in it, to Hogwarts Legacy, which actually was a very solid game, I would say. Final Fantasy XVI was definitely a huge hit for me personally. Even coming up to the most recent Spider-Man 2 and Mario Wonder. Like, Mario Wonder has been an amazing game, and it is so hard to pick a game that I've just like, this is my game of the year. But after looking back at all the games, even going back and playing a bunch of these games, just getting a little bit of extra free time in between the craziness that was October and everything, after playing everything, I had to look and see like what game captured me so much that I just went through the entire game just not putting it down, not because I needed to make content on it or do something, but just because I was so drawn into it. And as cliche as it might sound, I have to go just it's a little bit above, and we'll talk about this in my runner up later on, but I have to go with Spider-Man 2. And it's not necessarily to say that it is destroying every other game and that it is top of the top, and everything else is like a 9 or an 8 or even, God forbid, a 7, right? And then this is like an 11 or something like that. But Spider-Man, it's been, I would say, since Spider-Man 2018 and even God of War 2018, Spider-Man 2, I literally sat down for over 19 hours and just played through the entire game, start to finish, doing every side mission, just immersing myself, getting used to the combat, learning new combos, traversing the world, everything. And I will still play it right now. New Game Plus isn't even out right now. I know they have their updates that are coming out that are going to add, like changing the weather, changing it from night to day and all that stuff. Most likely we'll see some kind of DLC that has to deal with some of the side missions that we saw potentially. But I can go back into this game and just play it. Now, I will obviously say it's not, again, a perfect game. There are easily critiques that I can make. I wish there were some more stealth missions, even though I know a lot of people don't like some of the stealth stuff, which is totally fine. But I personally love webbing up like 15 guys just aiming my camera at them and be like, hey, look, it's Christmas in July or something. That typical thing. I also know that there easily could have been some more side missions. A lot of people are saying the story is a little bit on the short side, which is totally fine. That's a perfectly fine critique if you want. For me personally, I thought the main story itself was fine. I did feel that the third act was a little rushed, it felt like, especially like once Miles gets his new suit and then you're like, wait, when have you been working on this? Like, we just did this and now we're, easily there's that kind of stuff. And I wish there was more to do in the post-credit game, essentially, after you've completed the story and everything like that. Like, obviously, if you never touch any of the side stuff, then yeah, you can. But I felt like there could have been some more there. And again, maybe they're waiting just for some DLC stuff or, you know, whatever they're deciding to do. But regardless, Spider-Man 2 has to easily be my game of the year just because, again, it is so immersive. And in terms of like the web swinging and everything, like I barely use the glider as it is. I use it more in tandem with the web slinging so that if there's ever no buildings around, I'll quickly use it. But then I simply grab the next building and keep swinging. I can. It's perfect. It's because it's a great system and everything. But if I had to compare the first 2 Spider-Man games and then obviously Spider-Man 2 in terms of like the web swinging and traversal and everything, man, Spider-Man 2 is like next level.
Yeah,
just absolute next level. Going from web swinging into your glider, and yeah, I barely use it myself, but the fast travel, like what the heck?
Oh my
like
God, dude.
just hold it down. And it's like, oh yeah, by the way, you're there already. Like
instant.
What the heck? Or switching between the 2 Spider-Men. Like there's no load times. Like it's definitely it feels like that next gen thing that, you know, you can easily market, and it obviously has worked for them.
I like Spider-Man. It's the same thing I liked about Final Fantasy was the spectacle, right? Like Final Fantasy and Spider-Man, both of those games, right? Obviously Square, you know, they've been doing spectacle forever. And Insomniac has just stepped up to the plate with huge moments in Spider-Man. Like,
dude, Insomniac's carrying PlayStation this generation.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm just gonna say it.
And yeah, I could absolutely respect it as a Spider-Man fan, fanboy. That's what my wallpaper on my computer is, Spider-Man. Like I can respect that take down. That's very cool.
No, I agree. I was gonna say too, their rendition of Venom to me was like, I think it's my favorite version.
Dude, that Venom, man, especially that voice.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just so used to like the big bad Venom, right? Who just wants to kill Spider-Man. Like that's like my, like, I guess from what I've gotten from like over the years of like my, I don't know, my version of Spider-Man. So like
my Venom.
Yeah, so like this for me was like, oh my God, this is a way new take on like Venom, and like I love this version of Venom so freaking much. So for me, the biggest thing of this game was Venom and how much I loved Venom. And not to go into any spoiler stuff, but I mean, what they did with Venom in this game was just chef's kiss.
Oh, and again, and going off of Final Fantasy 16, like you said, with the voices and everything, like obviously the voice actors for both Spider-Man, top tier, like absolutely love them. The voice actor for Venom, all of them, great performances across the board. You really felt it, whether it was in the normal suit, in the black suit, which again, not a spoiler because we already knew the black suit was there because obviously Venom's here and everything, but just the range on a lot of those characters is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, let me say, if there's one acceptable loss for Ben Starr, it's Yuri, because Yuri in this black suit,
that's fair.
That whole arc, he was phenomenal in Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, it easily comes down to those two. Like, I'm sorry, like there are a ton of great voice actors out there, and I don't want to say that you're not worth it or anything. I really don't. But in terms of the game awards at this particular year, it's got to be between those two for me personally.
Yeah,
just for me personally.
It's kind of like how, like, realistically, we all know that the game of the year is between Baldur's Gate and Zelda. Like, we know that,
we're making this video,
but we're making this video anyway, because like we're talking about like what if we had our way. Like I'm willing to concede Baldur's Gate.
If we had say in it, right? If we had real say in it, right?
But like with that, it's the same thing, right? Yuri Lowenthal and Ben Starr, just two shining stars, no pun intended, in voice acting this year for those performances for Spider-Man 2 and Final Fantasy 16. Like, just wild performance.
100%. Like we said before, though, obviously we don't have complete control on how to make these to pick our game of the years, essentially.
Yes.
So now that we've given our game of the year, now we got to talk about our runner-ups, though, because obviously, you know, it's hard to, especially in 2023, it is super hard to pick a contender for game of the year when you have all these amazing games, because you're like, you know what, I love this game for this particular reason, I love this game for a particular reason. So now, going back to Bobby, we're going full circle here. Bobby, what is your runner-up for game of the year? Let's just say, for example, either Baldur's Gate 3 didn't exist or something happened and you had to pick a runner-up. What is your game of the your runner-up for?
We all know the answer to this question, Tallen.
Of course,
don't be silly. So yeah, I'm gonna be a basic bitch about it and say Tears of the Kingdom, because it really, if
a DLC,
a $70 DLC, Modern Warfare 3. $70 DLC that expanded on the map, vertically, as well as just redoing everything on the original map itself. It had 3 levels of stuff. You could make anything you could think of. Tallen sent me him making like giant mechs to fight the Lynels, and like I was making this stupid little planes to just go around and collect stuff super fast. And like everything about that game to me was super fun. And if it was not for the fact that Baldur's Gate 3 came out and was like, hey, by the way, we're changing how you should just think about RPGs entirely, that hands down would have been my game of the year. Hands down. There's nothing with those two that stands. Like, there's been so many great games this year that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, but like, there's nothing that stands with Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate. And I even think Nintendo was just like, all right, we got this one in the bag. And then Baldur's Gate came out and they were probably like, shit. Like, you know, like, yeah, we tried, but man, yeah, Tears of the Kingdom, I still just hop in and go collect some Korok seeds and then build dumb stuff to fight enemies, and like it's just so fun. Like it's Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts in Legend of Zelda, and I'm down with that. Like I'm old. I'm down with that.
It absolutely is. It is. I mean, I even took that game with me, you know, because the Switch is a great portable, obviously. I took that back to the States for my 3-week vacation when I finally got to go home, and I was playing a ton of Zelda, just going around collecting, you know, new weapons and everything, trying to make sure that I got the best ones I possibly could. You know, finding the Lynels and everything, getting, you know, saber horns onto my weapons to fuse them and everything like that. And, you know, I always give the Switch a crap time when it comes to how old its hardware is and the performance especially, but you have to give it to them. Zelda, your performance for the Switch, it was top of the top. I mean, again, I know the Switch is not as powerful as the top of the line PC or even the current gen Xbox and PlayStation and everything, but you know what? That extra basically year that they got to polish and optimize the game, like, yes, it paid off. Like, the game never crashed on me. Never.
Yeah, I never
whatsoever.
had a crash.
Did I see some frame hiccups here and there? Obviously, duh. Like, yeah, I'm gonna see that kind of stuff. It's on a freaking Switch. I mean, that hardware is what? It's pushing 10, 12 years old now?
It's like, yeah, the hardware itself is
up
about
there.
10 years old.
Yeah.
The hardware, we're not talking about when the Switch released, when the hardware itself came into existence. It's been like 10 plus years. So, you know what? To do what they did on that, I give them props. I still want a more powerful Switch, though.
Oh, yeah, we all do.
Just saying.
But, I look at it as when you have game devs going, Nintendo, how?
Yeah, how the heck did
how did you
run?
get this to work at all? Like, people who are like people who made God of War are like, how did you do this? You go, that's pretty impressive.
I was say big props to the finale for that game. Amazing.
Oh,
for me that like whole final, like that final section there.
Yes,
was some top tier for me, top tier Zelda moments. That final right there.
Those are some cool moments. I absolutely have to agree with that.
Yeah, and I felt it was like really like a Zelda game ending. Versus like Breath of the Wild, the ending was kind of like, okay, that was a little weird and kind of like anticlimactic, and then this one was just wow. Like when you're done, you're just like, yes, that's what I need.
That was literally me. Like my mouth on the floor was like, whoa, like that was insane. Like
I will absolutely agree with that. Yes,
for me, it's funny because like for me, I had a little bit of like a tough time going through that game, but that final section, man, oh man, when it picked up there, it was just like, oh. This is a hell of a game, the way that game ended. So that's definitely my thing on that game.
All right. So then speaking of runner-ups, then Lethal, how about you? You said Final Fantasy 16 was your game of the year personally. What is your runner-up if you had to pick a game?
So this is a game that I know it's not going to cater to a lot of people, but
I know what he's going to say.
I commend the people who are at least giving it a shot. And I know this game probably won't hit, I think, game of the year at the actual TGAs, but I have to pick Lies of P. And this was
that was coming.
This was such a standout game for me. I feel like it's since like Elden Ring. I feel like I lie. I'm sorry, Bloodborne. But since Bloodborne, I became like a big fan of like the Souls games, and I'm like a late Bloodborne player. I'm talking like I played it. I think I played it on at the end of my PS4 Pro, like time with it or whatever, before I went to PS5. But I started getting into Soulsborne games because of Bloodborne, and so Lies of P was like the next Soulsborne game coming out, and I was like, you know what? Let me give this a shot. It's also like another take on Pinocchio, which I thought was kind of interesting. But like, man, Oh man, did I not expect to be sort of blown away by this game. I mean, I have to give credits to the developers. I know they're not like a big known studio name or anything. I know it was like published and developed by, again, like a very small team. And so like this is one hell of a game that didn't have any like, you know, not that I know of at least, any like major big support from like a big like third party person. I know it was on Game Pass and everything, but I'm not too sure if like Xbox had anything to do with the game's development, because to my knowledge, I don't think so. But it was such an incredible freaking game. You know, these types of games, they don't have like the most like obvious kind of stories, right? A lot of it is like, you know, learning from your environments, right? Reading from, you know, picking up pieces of like articles, news and stuff like that, and like reading descriptions of items. Like it is one of those games. But for whatever reason, I just was so compelled to like want to actually learn about this game. You know, this didn't have like the most grandiose of like side quests or anything like that, but man, did this game do so freaking well when it came to that Soulsborne kind of combat. Like legit, I was like, whoa, like this felt so good. And just what they did with like Pinocchio and like his arm, his prosthetic arm that could just have different types of like prosthetics, whether, you know, you use like a cannon or you're using the grapple. I just thought that was such a cool kind of twist to like the Souls formula. And so to me, like it just made combat honestly so much more fun. And just what they did with like even like the fabled darts and like all these cool ways of having a fun kind of combat, again with this whole Souls with the whole Souls style. But the enemies in this game were so freaking cool. I mean, even the puppets, like, you know, again, this is like the world of Pinocchio, right? And so like they had the use of like puppets and some other cool stuff that I don't want to like, you know, spoil and get into. But overall, like this was one of those like kind of like surprise games where I walked away and I was like, holy crap, like I need more of this. And the way this game ends, and I wish I could talk about it, but the way this game ends, that it sets up for some cool stuff to come, like in the future of like this universe, I guess you could say, is so freaking cool that it gets you so excited to be like, yo, like this is something I need to like stay on top of. Like this is now a developer that I need to stay on top of as well. And like I'm so excited that they already announced like DLC and a sequel. And so this is definitely a game where I feel like people should give it a shot. I have no idea if it's still on Game Pass. It might be still on Game Pass. But this is one of those games that you definitely take advantage of, and you get that Game Pass to play it because it's so good. So yeah, I have to put that up.
Or
there.
even better, go buy the game and, you know, try it on Game Pass, but then go buy
100%,
it.
yeah.
Support these developers. Like these, I mean, like you said, the fact that it's already getting DLC and a sequel confirmed, like they hit a pretty big mile mark for a small team like this. Just all the props to them. All the props to them personally. I've been able to play the game just a little bit. I need to finally sit down probably during winter vacation time for me personally and just go through this game and actually be able to just sink a ton of time into it and everything. It's a pretty fun game with the little amount of time that I've been able to play it so far. And a lot of people, you know what, they're actually talking about it online and everything, and a lot of people are like, you know what, this game pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, I've played it and I'm like, this feels great. It feels, you know, it's very obviously taking heavy inspiration from Bloodborne, right? But there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I've been playing when I can't, like I play, you know, I'll play like an hour of a game and then I got some stuff to do, and then I'll play another hour of a different game. Like, so I was like, oh yeah, I'm playing this, playing that. But like I was playing Liza P and I played, you know, a couple hours of it and I was like, this is rad. Like this is very, very cool. Because we end up seeing just that kind of formula and that aesthetic that people loved from Bloodborne, kind of taken and twisted, like you said, like Pinocchio style, like puppets, which is so cool. Yeah,
it's unique. It's super unique. I mean, I've not played a game that's like that, so instantly drawn in just because of, you know, the world and the enemy types and what they're doing with Pinocchio. And then also, like, I forgot to mention this too, but like even like the way they did the narrative around like lying, and it's how it's like paying homage to Pinocchio. It's so freaking awesome, and like those dialogue selections are just like, this is fun, this is cool, because everybody can obviously get different endings, and so it's honestly like it's such a good game that you just have to play this game. I hope more people play it. I hope it gets more traction, especially with the Game Awards. So
I hope it gets some love at the Game Awards, because it is a standout thing for like the first game of this size from a super small company, right? It's gotten a huge reception. But what about you, Tallen? What's your runner up?
My runner up. So I had to think about this again a little bit more, because again, just so many great games this year, and it was a tough one. It was between Mario Wonder and Final Fantasy 16, but in the end, I had to go with Final Fantasy 16. And the only reason, I think the thing that pushed it above Mario Wonder, and again, both are amazing games. Go play them. Just absolutely go play them. I mean, God, my poor little Switch, man. Mario Wonder, man. That Mario Wonder just makes that thing run like a jet engine sometimes. I'm like caressing it right now. I'm like, it's okay, man. Your time is almost up. We will give you a proper burial soon when the next Switch comes out.
Someone didn't get their Zelda OLED refresh like I did.
But yeah, no, I have to go with Final Fantasy 16 because again, things that Lethal talked about with him making it his personal game of the year. Everything from the presentation to the voice acting to the music to the big spectacle battles to even again the combat. And again, yes, there are obviously some issues with some of the RPG stuff, the swords. This is like, yeah, big number go up essentially, like that's it. But it was still fun to play. It was just like I can go back into the game right now and play. I loved making a combo of both the Titan, the Behemoth, and just going in between. I was able to go where I was just like, okay, you know what? I got a minute to take down this mini boss or this giant person with all his health and everything. I'm like, yeah, we got this. Sword combo into this ability, blocking this, parrying this attack into my laser blast. It was just, it's so much fun to do and everything. And the fact that they came out and there's now two pieces of DLC, if I remember correctly, for this game now that are currently being worked on. And I'm just like, yes, all the love to Yoshi P, to everyone who made this game. That team needs to be preserved. Square, get your head out of your ass with your NFTs and all your other crap stuff that you've been trying to do for the last 3 years. Final Fantasy 16 was never going to carry you and just recover everything, but keep this team, stop all that other stuff, focus with what you guys actually know and can do, and go forward is all I'm gonna say. I've ranted about it before in this particular video that we have linked in the top right corner and down below that we've talked about many times, but stop it, Square. Do what's right. Keep this team alive forever. Like, just do it.
Square, they do need to adjust their priorities because when they're firing, they are firing, and there's not many studios, developers, publishers, whatever you want to call it, that compete with what Square offers when they are firing on all cylinders. Like, it's nuts. But then they make really weird, stupid decisions sometimes that are like, why would you do that?
Why would you do this? Now, I do have a little bit of hope that with the combination of the team that made this game, and obviously is still working on Final Fantasy 14 because that's an ongoing game right there, they have actually switched over to, like, you know, a new CEO and some other higher ups and everything, kind of letting the younger generation, aka our generation right now, start taking over. And a lot of those older generation founders and everything, they're stepping down and retiring finally, and we're starting to think, I think, see the props of that and everything. I mean, heck, you're even seeing Final Fantasy 14 show up on Xbox now finally, right? And you know, again, Final Fantasy 16, we got Rebirth coming up. I mean, damn, Rebirth comes out at the end of February, and I'm like, God damn, is that gonna be my game of the year already for 2024?
It's mine.
I mean,
it's mine. Nothing is beating that. I'm sorry.
Lethal's like,
dude.
I'm sorry.
Dude, Rebirth is looking amazing right now, and I'm just like, like,
I'm sorry.
I
hate to say it, but like, Wolverine could come out, and I'm sorry, it's not taking Rebirth from me.
Lethal says that, and then FromSoft goes.
I won't go that far.
I will.
But I will. Again, but like Bobby said though, when Square is firing on all cylinders,
it's hard to top.
That makes Final Fantasy 16 my runner-up essentially, right? And you know, and we can easily say something along the lines of, you know, well, if this game didn't come out, this would be my game of the year. So for me, if Spider-Man didn't come out, I'd probably be going with Final Fantasy 16 as my game of the year. But again, it's my runner-up, so that's what I have to give it to.
And that's absolutely fair. I was gonna say Lethal says that about he's like, Rebirth's my game of the year, you know, and then next year FromSoft goes, by the way, Elden Ring 2 drops this year. And Lethal's like, no.
Maybe the DLC. But
the DLC,
probably that deal. I mean, they already announced it, so I mean,
that's gonna drop.
I mean, hey, Game Awards. I mean, hey, it makes the most sense. Game Awards, it makes the most sense. Let's be honest, it makes the most sense.
Yeah. So, but anyway, those are our lists, everybody. We want to know your thoughts below in the comments now, though, because again, 2023 has been a banger of a year when it comes to video games, and like you guys just saw with all of our top picks and our underdogs and all that kind of stuff, there are a ton of games, and unfortunately it does come down to, well, if this particular game didn't release, then this would totally be in the running. looking at you, Diablo and Starfield, and then Baldur's Gate just comes up and be like, hold my beers as I just swipe this away from you guys, right? So it's pretty crazy. But regardless, this has been an amazing year for gaming. The Game Awards are coming up very soon. So by the time you guys are seeing this, go check out all the nominations for all the different categories and go vote. So again, like I said before, though, let us know all your thoughts in the comments below. But before we head off, any final words from you guys?
Play Liza P, and then make sure you play Final Fantasy XVI if you haven't already.
Absolutely. Because that's another thing that we forgot to mention with Final Fantasy 16 is they're working on their PC port right now. That is being worked on alongside with the DLC. And I mean, if that game looks as amazing as it is right now on the PlayStation 5 right now, regardless of the resolution and everything, PC is going to make that game is going to look beautiful. It's going to look really nice.
And I want to say the day you're watching this is when all these announcements are going to be made. Someone is going to get upset, right, that their game is not on the Game of the Year list, right? You know, like and I'm seeing like Starfield, Hi-Fi Rush, and Final Fantasy 16 I think are going to be fighting for a spot. That's how I feel like it's going to go. And the last thing I want to see is people going like, oh, well, this is trash. Like, okay, like I'm not super hyped on Starfield, but like a lot of people like it. I really didn't like Hi-Fi Rush, but a lot of people like it, right? So like if your game is not on the list, it's okay. Like it'll probably be nominated somewhere like Best Action Adventure or Best RPG or whatever.
It doesn't, you know, I don't even know the words, but it doesn't take away from the fact that if you enjoyed that game and it's your personal game of the year, that's awesome.
Exactly.
That's great. There are people who are saying this particular game is game of the year, this particular for them personally, and that's totally fine. Because guess what? In the end, it's all opinion.
Of course.
Yep.
It all is. Like, I mean, heck, when Elden Ring won Game of the Year over Ragnarok, honestly, I was just like, I mean, Elden Ring was great. It was a good game. I thought Ragnarok was better personally.
Yeah.
You know, and there are obviously people who are flipped on that, and you know, they thought those two games were not worth Game of the Year, and this was. You know, it all comes down to what you personally prefer.
Yep.
In the end. So, with that being said, everyone, I've been Tallen with Direct Gaming, joined by, again, LittleBobby and Lethal. Thank you so much for joining us today in this particular video. We want all your thoughts down in the comments as always. And if you enjoyed the video, a like would be greatly appreciated, along with a sub. If you want to really support us, it helps us out a ton. With that being said, everyone, we'll see you guys all in the next one. Have a great week and a great weekend. Until next time, everyone, Johnny.